Hi there, I hope you're doing well. I am back today to review another eyeshadow palette. This actually comes in a full collection with different types, and this is by MAC, and it is the personality palettes. Yes, so there is quite a few released. They run about $40. I think it was $39.50 if I remember right. I will put the price next to me so you can see. But they basically have different personalities depending on the mood you're kind of going for. So all different names to them, and they're pretty nice. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 eyeshadows and a highlighter. Yes, I did not count it out first. So I have been using the one that I have all week just so I have a better idea of how it works, because I don't like to come on and review. I do first impressions sometimes, but sometimes I like to actually use it just so I can give you the 411 of how it works. So the palette that I picked up, I only did pick up one because I am only one mere mortal woman with 2 paychecks a month. So the one that I picked up is, of course, the Basic Bitch palette. Yeah, I know. It gets straight to the point. But, you know, it's interesting because some of the names, I don't really feel like they necessarily matched, I guess, the names. So, you know, it's interesting to look at them and see the colors and go, I don't know if I'd necessarily put that name with this. Now, what I will say is with Basic Bitch, again, I don't know if it necessarily fits the requirement for that. You know, it pretty much is very much a cool tone palette, so I don't know if they're saying something to us ladies who have a cool tone. I didn't name it. Mac did. So, you know, I was reading online, some people weren't really happy with it. Some people aren't happy with the kind of names like this being put to makeup, because it's kind of like, I want it to remain ladylike or, you know, cheery. I actually don't mind, but I know some people are kind of like, really? Yeah, so if somebody asks you, hey, what do you wear today? Basic Bitch? Excuse me? So yeah, I can kind of see why. There's basically 6 mattes and then 2 shimmer type colors right here at the end of the Basic Bitch palette. Yeah, I know, I'm just gonna keep saying that. I rarely swear on here, but you know, when you have this going on, why not? So, that was my water bottle, by the way. Keep hydrated, it's still summer. So, inside they have the names, which, you know, I do prefer them down below. It just makes it easier, but I know a lot of people don't care, you know, but it tells you the names and then you can see which one that you're using. But I did wear it all week because I like to test them out unless I'm doing a first impression, but I like to wear them and then tell you how they wore just so you know. So I have worn basically every single color except for this purpley brown one, though I did swatch it a few times. That is the only one that I really did not use. What I can say about the palette, one of the reasons why I didn't use it is I kind of felt like this purple one just kind of didn't fit. And you know, it's a really beautiful color, but with all the blues and the slate kind of coloring, I felt like it kind of didn't fit with the rest of the palette. So I'm like, I didn't use it as much. So it would definitely work with the silver here. Well, it's a bluish silver, so it could work with the highlighter if you wanted to use that on your lid and then use this. But I just felt it was a little bit harder sell in the whole palette to put together. I did feel like the rest of the colors were very cohesive and worked together quite well. What I will say is that some of the colors are extremely deceptive. So to me, this kind of looks like almost like a lavender kind of gray color, but it actually comes up darker. This one, it ends up looking more brown, so it actually would go with this one well, but you could use that over the lid and then throw this, but both of these kind of have almost like a brown overcast to them, which I didn't expect. Also, these two, which are the 2 darkest colors of the gray, they're very similar. They look like they're many shades different, but the black versus this darkish kind of bluish gray, they're very similar, and you'll see that when I'm swatching it. So a lot of the colors are very similar or don't swatch quite the same color that they look like in the palette. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and swatch these on my arm. I will also put a quick swatch to the side like I usually do so you can see it up close and personal as well when I get towards the final review part. And so here we go. Okay, so what I am going to do is start with the first 4. I've put them onto my finger, swirling them 3 times a piece. And here you go. So that's what they show up like. So the first 2 at the top, which you can see there, are the shimmers of the group. So there are, again, there's only 2 of them, and those are the 2 at the top. And I actually lied to you. It's actually this one and this one, so it's the first and the third down. So it's this one and this one. So the first and third colors are the only shimmers of the group. They actually swatch pretty well. But I have to be honest with you, when I was using on my eyelid, which I used all across the lid, it takes a little bit of time to build up, so they're a little bit deceptive. They swatch a lot better than they actually work on the eye. But I'm going to get to that a little bit later. So then the next 4 are going to be these guys. Here we are. You see a lot of slates and gray colors. There we go. So you can see it's very, very similar in tone. There's a lot of similar colors here. Even with the light blue shimmer against the blue shadow, very similar. So I kind of like that about the palette though, because it makes it very cohesive, but I kind of wish that there were a few more colors in there. But just looking at it, yeah. I mean, the thing is, when you put them on the eye, they're not that different that it always makes a difference in the eye look, if that makes sense. So what I did want to point out was this one right here. That's the one that I was talking about earlier that looks kind of like this gray, like lavender color, and it actually comes up like this. So that's why I'm saying that these 2 colors go together quite well if you're making an eye look. The black isn't black. It looks like it well, mostly like that in the palette, but it's a dark gray. It also was a little bit harder to build up. It's showing up okay there, but it does tend to get a little bit patchy. I didn't really use it on my eye because I have very fair skin, as you can see, and I felt like it would overwhelm it, but I did use it under my eye as an eyeliner, and it works really, really well when you're using it that way. But just kind of messing with it one night, it was a little bit patchy, so you're gonna have to do a little bit of repair if you're using it for smoky eye look for it to work the way that you want it to. Now, as for the shimmers, as I pointed out earlier, these 2 guys here, they are beautiful and swatch wonderfully on the arm. What I will say is that the darker of the 2, which is this guy here, did work really well. And I used it mostly on the outer corner of my eye just to give it a little bit of dimension on the lid. And it did work. I give this one a thumbs up. What I will say for this light blue one, it's going to take a little bit of time to build up, and even then it's not going to build up necessarily the way that you want it to be. It's a semi shimmer, so even though it looks like an opaque one on your arm, it doesn't work that way on the lid. So what I did originally when I saw with my brush or flat brush it wasn't working the way I wanted, I used my finger and tried it that way, and then I decided, you know what, I'm also going to try the I'm going to try using setting spray and then using a flat brush. And it didn't work as well as I would like. So the best way to use actually both of these is to use your finger and put them on the eye. To make this light blue shimmer work, the best way to do it is to pair it with this matte blue that is almost similar to it but lighter. Once you put that across your eye, it works better when you put this on top because they're very similar, and so it shows up better. But just know that this is not an opaque shimmer that's just gonna take over your eye. You can see that here. It's just not that type. It's more of a little kiss of shimmer, and then you move on with your day. It also has a tendency, both of them, to be a little bit messy. There's not fallout when you dip your brush in it or when you put your fingers in it, but when you're putting it onto your eye, it does fall around the eye line, so I did have to do a little bit of cleanup. So just know that most likely that is going to happen. I mean, it's not horrid, but it's reality. I felt like there wasn't a lot of fallout with this palette actually, which I really loved. But when you're putting on your eye, a little kind of goes a long way. It will spread out quite nicely, sometimes too nicely, where I had to go in and clean it up along the edges. So either wear one of those protectors or do your foundation a little later, or just do a touch up under the eyes, whatever. It wasn't horrible, it was just there, and there was a little bit of cleanup. So just be aware that that may be a possibility. I do feel like a little bit goes a long way. You can lightly tap your brush in and put it on. They are nicely pigmented. They do, for the most part, work quite nicely as far as spreading them out. Whew, I haven't had my coffee yet today, so they do really work well when you're putting them in the crease and working them out. I really love them. I really do think for the most part the formula is really great. The black one is a little bit patchy. I can deal with that. You know, I don't really use black that often, so for me it wasn't that big of a miss. But if you're into it, you may be a little bit disappointed. Like I said, the shimmer here was a little bit disappointing just because I expected it to be more opaque. This one does a lot better. Now this is a highlighter. I will say I am wearing it now and I'm looking at it, and you can definitely see it along here, up on the brow bone, and also slightly on the nose. So it does show up. But what I will say about this highlighter is that it took a little bit of time to build up. So it didn't happen immediately. You know, I had to go in several times, and I don't know if you can see it. I had to dig in there a little bit. So I went in 4 or 5 times to build it up to this color that I wanted. So it's not gonna work with the first swipe. You're gonna have to build up the color with this highlighter. It's a really pretty color, but if you're looking for a lot of bling with your highlighter, this is not the color. You know, this is very much use it and go to work. You know, because you may not want to have a lot of highlighter when you go to work. So this is a very natural highlight for the work day, or if you want a very nice, easy, beachy kind of look at the end of summer, or something that's just a little bit more natural versus people sometimes really want a bright highlight. This isn't it. I will say it's very finely milled. It's very nice, but again, you know, it has its limitations. Also, what I will say about it is this is, for the most part, a very cool palette. You know, this guy is a little bit more neutral, maybe a little bit warm, but for the most part, it's a very cool palette. And what was interesting with the highlighter was that this highlighter, though, it's a little on the warm side. I'll say it's a little bit neutral, warm, but it is warm. And so you have this more cool tone palette, with the exception of maybe these two, and which are a little bit more warm neutral, and then you throw in a warm highlighter. I was like, that's kind of a different choice. I would have gone with maybe a little bit more silvery highlighter, or a little bit more true bluish pink. So that kind of threw me off when I saw it. It definitely works, but it is warmer than the rest of the palette, which was kind of a head scratcher. So yeah, as far as the wear time goes, I do feel that it wears pretty well. I did wear it once without a primer just to see how it worked, and of course it didn't last quite as long because I have really oily skin, so nothing much lasts long. But I also did use it with the primer, and I feel that these wore pretty darn well. They started to change color maybe 6 or 7 hours in with me, even with the primer, less without the primer, but they did start to change. When you have oily eyes like I do, it kind of gets in there and then makes the shades kind of blend together and become darker. That's what happened with this, and that's just life as an oily skin girl. So that's basically what happened with this. So it's not necessarily Mac's fault, as much as it is just having oily skin just makes its own difficulties in life. So if you have combination or dry skin, these may last longer with you, but a primer, of course, is always going to make it last longer, and it did. It gave it a couple hours more before it changed by the end of the day. But what I do want to say is it is extremely humid in New York City in August, and it has been off the charts humid here, so that adds to it. So no matter what I do, even the best eyeshadows for the most part are not going to hold up to my oily skin and the humidity of New York City. So sometimes I like to try these later on in the year, like in fall, and look at them again, because sometimes when there's no humidity it makes a huge difference. But just be wary, that that was my reality with it in the month of August, and I'm sure it'd be fine if it was the fall, you know, but I don't know that for sure. Maybe I'll test it out and let you know. But what do I think of this palette? I'm gonna say there's a few difficulties with it, you know, with a couple of the shadows, these three here where I wasn't quite expecting, you know, I mean, I'm okay with patchy with this. This may annoy some people who want, you know, more of a smoky look, but you can definitely make it work. Just be patient with it. It will happen. This one you have to use in conjunction with this guy here to make it look more shimmery than it is. It's going to take you a little bit of work, but this guy works decently, so go for it. This one does not come out the color that it looks in the palette, but it goes nicely with this and the highlighter in the end, so who cares? Because in some ways I was kind of like, but I didn't mind because in the end it gave me a chance to do more of a purpley brown look, which makes it a lot more versatile, so I'm not going to complain about that. And lastly, this guy's a little bit too warm for this palette. I would have gone with a different color, but what are you going to do? I can bring in another highlighter because I have many if I need to change it. It just would have been a better move, I think, on Mac's part for this palette, but that's just me. The wear time's decent. It is very blendable. It works together quite well. I think it's very cohesive, and it's definitely a conversation starter with the name Basic Bitch. Yes. So that is my review on this palette today. Let me know if you picked up any of the personality palettes. I'm curious to hear what your opinions are on them. If you are a cool tone girl, rejoice. If you are offended easily, I apologize that this is what the cool tone palette looks like, but it really is quite fabulous and I'm happy to have it. So no complaints, but I don't get offended easily. It really takes a lot. So that is my review for today. Have a fabulous afternoon, and until next time, bye.